Hello, world. Welcome back to After Venus. My name's Sarah, and I'm here with my friend Holly. And today we're going to be talking about Gene Key 7. But before we get into Gene Key 7, we're going to recap what we discussed on Gene Key 33. Venus has retrograded and is now in direct motion. So we're beginning at Gene Key 33 and doing that recap. So, Holly, what do you have for thoughts on 33 now that we're moving in direct motion? Because last time we talked, we were actually retrograde.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, looking at like mindfulness. And again, I think the thing that stuck out to me most from that was this invitation to again like see each other, right? See myself in you, and to really sink into this idea that we've just been living out the same story over and over again a billion different times, and we've forgotten, we've so that's interesting. Yeah, I have been sort of reflecting on forgetting, and it's like again a wonderful invitation to forget what needs forgetting. There's certain things that we hold on to that just aren't true, that just like muddle and make things more complex. And those, I think, just need to go back into the compost. I was watching Benita Roy yesterday on an old session she did in the Hollows on the Stoa, and she said this crazy thing that I'm still digesting. She's like, "What if we are living a past that never was?" So, anyways, I'm like still like sitting with that, but kind of like I think about my own psychology and how I've had, and then working with people, but really just in my own experience of having this relationship to my past and to past memories, and telling a certain story about how things unfolded and what things were like, and my relation to my mom or me as a kid, and how that narrative has just changed over time, and that there's just certain things that I used to just sort of be such a victim in, where it was like, I got this, and I didn't get this, and I lacked this, and I didn't have this, and like some of that just needing to like actually be forgotten in a way, because there's a new narrative that's shaping up, which is like one of deeper compassion, and like one that's taking more of like my mom's point of view, and one coming from a deeper place of love and forgiveness. And so that old story kind of, it's worthy of forgetting, if that makes sense. It's worthy of forgetting. There's a richer, or like maybe it's more integrated, but yeah, that there's actually a richer story that benefits my future self a lot more, if I remember the deeper kind of being connected, and actually the gifts that are given a lot of times when we are neglected. It's like such an opportunity, like not having the mother that I longed for actually was the catalyst that led me into a deeper spiritual questioning and wanting to know myself and wanting to know the world in a more intimate way. Without that neglect, I don't think I would have had the motivation or the energy to seek as much as I have. And that seeking has led to a deeper truth of like, and not just like a knowing, but a deeper realization, an embodied realization that like the world, the universal mother, the cosmic mother, nature fucking loves us. Like she's got my back and she loves me. And that is that's a story that is worth remembering.
Oh, I was just thinking that. Yeah. Yeah. That's really, man, a lot of rich, content there. So the Benita Roy quote really stood out for me, living a past that didn't exist, or something along those lines. And what you're saying is like, yeah, those stories that we tell ourselves, because we get caught up in life. It's like, I got to move, 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 move. Once I make an achievement, then I'm going to move, 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 move. It's always plans, 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 plans. And it's like, hold on a second. That's that gift of mindfulness, is taking the time to really reflect and not feel like once you achieve something, you got to move on to the next thing, because then you forget. You forget what you even started for. What was the whole point of beginning this thing? Like when I quit my job recently, it was the question was presented to me, well, what did you get the job for, Sarah? Because you told me that you were trying to make money to get to Jordan. The end goal was to get to Jordan. Oh, I had forgotten about that because I'm like, oh, I'm here. I'm going to make community and I'm going to be friends with all these people. And that's great. But it's diverting my attention from the goal because now I've got all these other people's interest in mind and I'm no longer mindful. I'm no longer taking those pauses to soak in my harvest. That's kind of the thing that what really stood out for me in this meditation was it's a life with no harvest. And I am one of the world's worst harvesters. I love compost. I love weeding stuff. I love getting in there and getting dirty. But when it comes to harvesting, I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Which tool should I use? Is it okay to break it here? Like there's a lot of things to harvest that it's just like, I don't know. And then I like have struggled with eating, like actually consuming. And so, because I fucking forget to eat. I'll go throughout my day. I've got everything worked in except for scheduled meals. So now I've been like really focused on taking the time out to prepare my food as a ritual. And that was another thing he mentioned in here is that ritual of tea drinking and working in ritual without even thinking about it. Making the mundane magical is another quote from him. So, yeah, doing that, and we know this, how ritual can make your memory stick. Like, wow, the things that we've experienced in ritual were things I'll never forget. They are a part of the like amazing mythological plot of this life. And yeah, just the whole thing coming back on itself, that Ouroboros or whatever it's called. Um, yeah, that allows you to see the bigger picture, zoom out from your own drama, because that's what another thing that samsara or whatever a drama is in that language that he's speaking, stepping away from the drama and seeing it as this big theatrical play that you can be involved in and sort through and yeah, just take on different character roles and forget those characters that are disempowered. Remember the ones that are the warriors that you are. The reason your DNA has made it to this day is because you are a result, the product of survivors. And they lived through some harsh shit. So, yeah, remember that and being mindful in that and present in that. And that whole revelation is it turning back on itself. So,
Beautiful.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Any more thoughts on
No,
33?
I just noticed like a sadness. I just kind of noticed a sort of sort of empathic kind of like and a sadness just to like, yeah, like forgetting to feed yourself, and like especially with you, Sarah, where it's like you're such a generous, giving, your eyes are always out on taking care of people and noticing where your service thinking of your like just being led, it feels like a lot of times where you can be in service to a context and a situation. And then my heart started to just sort of break of like, and remembering to feed yourself, remembering that you are worthy, you and your the garden and your body are no different. And yeah, to give yourself that nourishment that you're so worthy of.
Thank you. Yeah,
Loving yourself as much as you love the world.
really. Yeah. Yeah, there's this quote that my instructor for astrology says that his wife, because she's an herbalist, and one of the things that she says when she comes home for vacation or whatever, it's overwhelming because there's so many things that need to be done in your home. Like once you come back from vacation, it's like, oh gosh, we got to change all the stuff, especially when you have a garden. And so the quote that she has is tend to the living first. And you have to remember yourself in that. And yeah, that when you give yourself so much to the world, give yourself so much to other things that you're endeavoring to do, like you've got to make money for your kids, whatever it is. I don't have kids, so I'm just like, that's an abstract example for me. But all these things that you tend to, oh, or even on the airplane, what's the instruction? Put your mask on before you put anybody else's mask on because you can't save people if you're not living.
Mm.
So yeah, that's so so true. that sadness really is there because you don't, when you forget about yourself, it's because you don't value yourself, and you have to value yourself over everybody, even though it feels like that isn't the way. It is, it has to be.
Mhm.
It's not selfish to take care of yourself, because you bring, you know, the wrong kind of energy when you aren't doing what you love. You, to spread love, you have to be doing what you love, and you have to take care of yourself and show yourself love. So
Yeah, again, that recognition that this is not different than this, that it's the same, and that you give yourself, you become so much more spacious when you feel your capacity to expand your heart and be there for people, to have that energy expands, when you're really nourished and relaxed and taking care of yourself. And it's a beautiful model. I mean, it's like letting the light come through. You've got to, and you're ingesting all this light. That's what plants are, right? You're ingesting all this light, so then that light can emanate back in. um
mm-hmm.
so it's actually doing the plants a service, because then they get to use your body to shine through. And it's beautiful, of course. Like, yeah, ritual is it's a way of praying. It's a way of being in constant state of prayer with the world. So it's beautiful. I just
Mm-hmm.
remember, what was coming up too with our time when you coming out to Texas, and like how I was going through, like, a lot of my shadow stuff was coming up, and I was getting stressed and overwhelmed, and you just, like, so nonverbal. You just knew how to show up and what I need. Like, you were just so attentive. Like, you didn't even have to ask. You just started doing stuff that you knew that I needed to feel better. And that was like such a beautiful gift. It really,
Mm.
yeah, it floored me, because you're just so attentive to the world and what's being asked and what's being needed. And again, there's then this longing that you reciprocate that for yourself. And
Mm.
anyways, just really appreciating you.
That's I mean, the fact that you had attention on that means a lot to me, because that's something that it kind of goes unnoticed sometimes, the work that goes on in the background just to
Yeah,
simply keep things harmonious. And yeah,
maintained, right?
so just the fact that you had the mindfulness to be attentive to that is like fills my heart. I can't even explain it to you. So thank you.
Same, same. I was like, I need something. You were there. You were like, oh, wait. Like, I'm like, things are messy. Like, I feel like I clean it all up, and there you were, and then just doing it with such grace and elegance. It was amazing to watch you wash dishes. It was beautiful. It was an art. Like, you were just, it was like the way you were treating that cutting board was like the way, like, treating a baby. Like, it was just this loving tenderness, and the quality of care that you gave was just inspiring. So
Yeah, yeah. In that dishwashing, experience, that was kind of the thing that was coming to mind, was mindfulness, and just
mhm.
thanking every one of your plates. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for holding my food. Thank you, cup, for holding my drink. And yeah, just like, because we were, yeah, it was a nonverbal day, and so the appreciation was just like felt. So, and a lot of what I was doing was out of gratitude for your land, out of gratitude for you for having us, because you're a caves environment. You don't necessarily always invite people in. And so
Yeah.
just feeling and sensing into how much it meant to just be in your space was like, I felt that was like the call to, yeah, I want to do things. I want to. And that's the difference between
Yes.
feeling compelled
Yeah.
and forgetting what you want,
Yeah.
then like remembering like all these things that have been done for me to get here, and all the space that we have to just let it go and to meet. And yeah, just that, it was all out of gratitude. I wanted to do that. So the fact, yeah, the mindfulness really came from just out of total appreciation. It wasn't like, oh, I gotta do dishes, there's that.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way. Like, no, I'll let dishes go, baby, I don't care. Normally. But no, it wasn't out of like the need for it to get done. It was like, thank you. Hey, you guys, what are you doing over here? I was like having a relationship with them. So,
I think
yeah.
this is a perfect segue too into 7, into virtue and leadership, guidance and leadership,
Ooh,
really,
okay.
because it is such a I think true leadership is like that. It is this nonverbal, it's an embodied, it's walking and living the example. That, yeah, it's not this dictatorial, like, do it like this. It's just it's a leadership of presence, of a deep kind of presence. And again, it doesn't need a whole lot of language to it, or a lot of verbal language. It's a body language. And that's the leadership of he talks about this, and I know we're going to listen to the meditation, but the difference between leadership through force versus leadership through inspiration. And that's what you were doing. And then you created that beautiful little garden, that got the compost, and that is an act of inspiration, not an act of dictation. And there's a huge difference between the two. So yeah, the mindfulness is a way of leading. It's beautiful.
Oh, wow. Nice. Okay, I'm glad that you got us into that because it's at the point now where we're gonna listen to the Gene Key 7 recording. I'm so interested to hear how it diverges from the book because then you do the reading and yeah.
Yeah.
So here we go. Oh, and the programming partner is 13,
13,
which
yeah.
is
So
your
it's
life's
funny.
work.
Yeah, life's work and my evolution. There.
Wow,
Mhm.
very nice. I
Yeah.
love this. So this is your conscious side. All right, let's
Mhm.
listen. Okay. I just want to recap what the frequencies are and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, it's great.
So, this Gene Key 7 has a shadow of division. The gift is guidance, and the Siddhi or the highest frequency is virtue. So, ma'am, since this is your evolution sphere, what's been your biggest challenge in life?
Well, it's interesting because that was so beautiful, by the way.
That
Just
was,
with
yeah.
that kind of those ripples, just, yeah. There's like a wordless. You said so many words, but like what I'm feeling is it's beyond the words, and just gratitude for whatever music and, entering into my body. And yeah, but the repressive is hidden, and then the reactive is dictatorship. So it's
Mm.
funny because it's like so weird, because like in my external world, in my sort of, want to look at it more from the pearl, for me, the conscious, I think has been more in the repressive and the hidden. Like I, just on a personal level, I've often shied away from leadership. Um, but then in my personal life, in my like personal relationships, I'm definitely more dictatorial. So the one to one, like in my, with romance and things like that, it's like I'm often like, hey, get it together, like, do it this way. So
Wow.
it's funny. I have I can really identify with both. I can identify with this hidden part, and I can really identify with the reactive, division of being dictatorial. Um, but yeah, wow, synarchy, a hierarchy of virtue. Um, there's so much landing there, and just that presence. And again, sort of how we segued in here, where it's just a kind of a way of being, a way of showing up, that a way of listening, and then a way of modeling that. Often, in my life, just working to open up so that I'm thinking nature's thoughts. Like I want to think the thoughts of the divine. I want to think nature's thoughts. I want to think God's thoughts. And the other thing, and I'd love to hear your reflections on this, that was really hitting me was boundaries. And I find myself, particularly in my relationship right now, where it's like this other has likes to bring up the darkness and the shadows. It's a very Gemini, right? Like, here's the light, and I'm going to
Yes.
presence the dark. I'm going to show you what's, you're optimistic. I'm going to show you where, the blind spot is, or what's wrong potentially, or and like there's a part of me that's like, I need to protect myself from that in a lot of ways. Like,
Mhm.
um, yeah, of course I can look at it as, it was like I had an example where I was like, oh, Sarah said this really nice thing to me. She said I was glowing, and I was feeling so sad actually in that moment. Like, I was feeling, and he's like, oh,
Oh,
you probably weren't actually glowing. She's probably just trying to make you feel better. And it was like an interesting sort of like, well, why would I question your authenticity and like what you were seeing? Like, I guess I could see it as like, you were feeling sorry for me versus a genuine expression of like what you saw. Um, so it's like those kinds of things where it's like, I don't want to be thinking like, I don't want to be thinking out of, I don't want to be giving attention to the fear based thinking. I don't want to be giving a lot of
yep.
attention to the darkness. The darkness is there. It's not a matter of being blind to it or being
Right.
naive to it. No way. Like, I'm not naive to suffering or to dark, but I don't want to feed it.
Yeah.
And again, I think what happens is the other is sort of like, yeah, but then you're being naive or you're being overly optimistic, or, but it's like, I got to set these boundaries of like, I don't, if you're trying to pull me into fear based thinking or into the darkness, I don't want to go along with you in that.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's that question for me. And as a Gemini, this is a great, maybe this is, or you're a Gemini rising, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, yeah, how do we live with that kind of dance and that paradox of blind spots and optimism? I mean, Richard Rudd talks a lot about optimism, and I
Hmm.
feel into that. And I don't feel like my optimism is naive. It's just more of like, what world do I want to create for myself? And
Yeah.
I want to create one where I'm seeing the beauty as
Yeah.
much as possible. And that doesn't mean ignoring what's ugly, but it's like actually finding the beauty in the ugly. Anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it takes us from 33 to 7 again, because in that 33 reflection, there's something about I carry good news that in the end, you just return back to the source.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's light in that darkness. But yes, and then moving us into 7, and how Richard Rudd says that this is kind of like the army. And he's like, I kind of want to get away from that. But there's strategy in war.
Yeah.
There is, you know, um, I'm reading some pretty dark shit right now for awakening. And I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
has to do with how there has been misuse of these practices, these ancient ways. They've been misused in certain um, instances throughout history, where the intention behind it was power. The intention behind that darkness is to overcome the light. And so the light just shines, but there's that intention from the darkness to try to overcome the light, perhaps. And so, yeah, division, it's causing division, causing discord. This, let me show you the flip side. And Gemini is great with this. Gemini is great with showing two sides of the coin, because it's the twins, it's represented by the twins. But what this gene key represents for Gemini, because it falls into the third house for Gemini.
Mm.
So gene key 7 falls into Leo, because that's why we're going through Venus, we're following her. And for Gemini on the rising, that is the third house. And the third house is the joy of the moon. It's the medium within which your like life takes place. It's kind of the water you swim in. And so what I'm sensing from that is, this is about my local environment. This can be even relationships with siblings. This can be relationships with neighbors or anybody in my local vicinity. And so when I'm sensing into this idea of division versus guidance and then into virtue, yeah, the way that I exist in my local environment is in service of people that I love.
Mm.
And so there's something in, I've already cultivated that love, because I've also noticed where I see my shadows in other people, and I have to reflect on, oh, that's coming from me. Now, why is that coming from me in relationship with this other? And so Yeah, I think that, and not in a way where it's like, I'm superior because I'm virtuous, I'm doing things for other people. But like I said to you about the dishes, it's not about doing for you. It's recognizing that I
Mhm.
want to see you. I want to see you glowing. And I told you that because I did see you were actually physically glowing. It
Yeah.
seemed like you got a haircut. So there was just something about, there was like a different look to you. And I was just like presencing that I saw you glowing. And so it's actually interesting, yeah, to hear that you were actually like sensing into like not maybe necessarily feeling like you were glowing, but also my intention is for you to glow no
Yeah.
matter what.
Yeah.
No matter
Exactly.
what. And even if you're feeling like you're in a dark place, I want to pull you out of that. And so it wasn't a disingenuous statement that I was making. And maybe I didn't know the depth to why I was seeing it, but there was something in me that said, you need to tell her she's beautiful right now.
Yeah.
So wherever that was coming from, um, that's what I was sensing into, that I was being guided in that moment to say. Also, you were sending me something very
Yeah.
sweet, and I wanted to reflect that back to you, that hey, I saw something in you today, and even if you weren't feeling it, you were glowing. So yeah, there's something in that of recognizing the division too, and seeing, you know, how that can help us, like you were saying with the relationship with your mother. And like, I think any relationship reveals to us. I was just talking about my shadows and seeing my shadows in other people. Grandpa complains all the damn time. Well, what am I doing right now?
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally, totally. Yep, yep. The humility. There's the humility he was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to go deeper then into any of these? Do you want to go deeper into the shadow, or do you want to go deeper into the gift? Or we kind of just covered a little bit about the shadow. So maybe we can go into guidance and what that means for you in this evolution sphere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just really want to reflect that and appreciate that, because when that comment from the other came, that was sort of like trying to divide, actually, like, it was like, oh, that felt so good to receive that gift from you, that compliment, that kind of, like you said, that there was something at play there. There was as like Red was saying, almost a heart to heart, like a belly to belly, like sensing into what maybe I needed in that moment to help pull me out of like a feeling of kind of um, sadness, or just to be that little beacon of light. But then someone else trying to diminish that, and that often happens where there's that test where it's like, um, I'm going to inject some self-doubt, or kind of maybe their own fear or their own frustrations coming in, and wanting to sort of um, desecrate
Mm-hmm.
desecrate something. And so then what do then there's that boundary and that protection where it's like, I'm not going to let that thought or that perspective diminish the essence or the seed of what that was, which was felt embedded in a deep love and genuine sincerity. um so yeah, I'm still kind of wrestling with the division here, and that, how to protect oneself, and protect oneself in a way, but again, where you're not being naive, or you're not fooling yourself, as well.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
humility is so crucial.
Totally. I have another good example. I'm attending church now with my mom,
Mm.
and one of the biggest questions to me is like, how am I going to be received when I practice astrology? I was like really kind of worried. I was like, oh, all these people, and like, what are they going to think about me? And I was like, you remember, I was like, I'm just not going to be liked anywhere I go. People are just not going to like me in the astrology community. They're not going to like me because I'm practicing Catholicism. In the Catholic tradition, they're not going to like me because I'm practicing astrology. And there was that division in my mind. I was like, they're not going to like me. They're not going to like me. Well, then, I mean, in several instances now, in church going settings, and even yesterday, I volunteered at the Godsmack concert,
Oh,
Atreyu and
wow.
Godsmack with my Catholic church.
Wow.
And I was like, this is really cool. Like they're going into places where, you wouldn't necessarily expect them to want to go to. Well, what I noticed is a lot of shit talking. Did you see what that girl was wearing? in like this way where they're trying to like just build camaraderie, but it's
Yes.
around division. It's around
Yeah.
us versus them. Who are they versus me? So I'm walking around with my cross on with my shirt, and I noticed that when I would go into places, because I kind of felt like, oh, these people that are here for this concert, they might not like me because I'm here with my cross on or whatever. And maybe they were also talking too. But then I started to realize it doesn't matter. I'm a light. I'm going to be a light no matter where I go. If I go into, and neither one of those represent darkness to me. If anything, they all represent darkness to me, because the gossip and and then what's this, the motive behind some of these songs. I mean, it is to like share in grieving and, this kind of dark,
Yeah.
fine. But I'm going to stand up as a light. I'm going to stand
Yeah.
up as a light in my church. And even if, even if I've never considered Catholic because of the things that I do in this realm, I'm shining light. I feel called to do this as a gift from God for me.
Yeah.
So whatever anybody wants to think about that, it's not, I'm not dividing myself from them. I will no longer do it. I'm an astrologer, and, I'm pursuing a path of the way with my mother. That's the reason, and she guides me through that. And so I have her to help me through all these times when she's like, Sarah, you know what? Don't worry about what they think. Don't worry about
Yeah.
what they think. And the reason I was so worried about what they think is because I'm scared of what they'll think about her. And she's like, I don't care. I don't care. So yeah, I think there's something in that too, of not allowing the darkness in that tells you that you can't be something because you break this rule. It's like, no, I'm still doing everything I can to be the best that I can be and to share that light and to spread it. And so for me, that's the Christ consciousness.
Yeah.
And that's what appeals to me, but also in light of the fact that Mother Mary gave body to Christ. And I adore that dynamic of recognizing that coming together doesn't mean we shit talk the other group. It
Yeah.
means we come together as humanity.
Yeah. Beautiful. Great guidance. Yeah. Yeah. Because and then Richard in that meditation, and then was also like bringing in Gene Key 4 of understanding and forgiveness. And I think that's the path. It's like, okay, there's like these, I sent you that poem, Do Not Feed the Monsters, arrows of gossip and envy, right? And jealousy. And if you can take that understanding and actually find the love actually within the envy and the jealousy, that it's actually like what you're saying, where it's like there's probably a deep insecurity happening, and there's a sense of wanting to join, like you said, and have this camaraderie. But that deeper, that jealousy, that gossip, that envy is often just sort of a deeper feeling of probably suffering and fear, and one's own inner division, one's own lack of love for oneself, coming forward. And when I can go to there versus like, okay, you're just jealous and envious, it's like actually going into where is that rooted in more deeply. It's so much easier for me to make that compassionate move, or to go, oh, this is just coming from a place of hurt. And that requires light and love and understanding and forgiveness. So it becomes way less personal, which is always helpful, and much easier to then soften and not get defensive, or not create that division. I mean, that's division is often, I feel like, this putting up the defense, that wall. And then again, though, but this is so interesting, and boundaries being, yeah. So this is interesting. I think going into guidance, if we want to move into that, I think about guidance. I think about the ultimate source of guidance, which is that divine will, and that deep listening. Like that's where really true guidance comes from. It doesn't come from me. It comes from my body becoming an open portal, an open vessel through which that divine will, that divine impulse, arousal energy manifests. And it takes exactly what he was saying, that discernment between what is the surface desire versus what is the divine desire. And that can be difficult to discern sometimes. But but there's only the only way you can, for me, I've noticed that I can experience that guidance is through spaciousness and a silence and a stillness. There's no other. Um, it's amazing because it doesn't. I mean, I've been practicing it over and over and over again for many years, with especially with the Zen, through Zen meditation. But it can be as quick as like 30 seconds of just breathing and being quieting my mind, and in 30 seconds, or that's longer, there's no exact timing on it, but it's amazing actually how little it actually takes, even though it sometimes feels like it takes a lot. It's like, where's the guidance? And it's like, man, if you just sit still for like a minute, open up, there's actually quite a bit of resources there.
Yes. Yes. Opening up. And so that's, I mean, again, 33 led us here. Well,
Yeah.
one of the things that you said was the will. And the will for me as an astrologer is always associated with the sun. The sun is our
Mm,
will, where the rising sign is like our ego. It's like the character that we play. It's how we get to the means to the end, which is the will. The will is where we're headed towards.
yeah.
And this house, or Leo, the zodiacal sign within which this gene key has been assigned, is the domicile of the sun. And so there's something really interesting here, because we're going to virtue through
Mhm.
guidance. And so yeah, I was just like sensing into how nice it is that they've associated with these I Ching symbols, the gene keys, with astrological points, and how the themes of the astrology really do match what they're trying to do with the I Ching. And I don't know how they made this order,
Mm.
because clearly it's not 1 2 3 4, it's 33 7 4. So it's like that some thought was put into this. I just don't know how it was constructed. But yeah, I'm I like that idea of opening yourself up and receiving the guidance instead of trying to guide. And there was another thing in that too. He was like, be careful. If you say I want to guide people, what is that about? What's
Yeah.
the intention behind that? Because the desire to guide for your life, like that, I mean, think about George Washington, our very first president here for us Americans. As far as the country was constructed in its form now. And so what George Washington, they've defeated the king, and now they're like, hey man, do you want to be our king? And he's like, what? No, be a
Right.
king. And so that's why we have this whole idea of president, checks and balances, and the original intent of this formation of this country as it's now. And so there was like the virtue was, we're going to collectively guide or something along those lines, but really opening up and sensing into it, and instead of saying, yes, I am in charge here, he didn't want to be the guide, but it was kind of. And so that's kind of the thing, like you feel into that virtue
Mhm.
to assign where it is that you might be a good guide, but you still maybe should have some reservations about people following you, because what does that mean about you? I'm the Messiah.
Yeah, there's that interplay again with the ego, where again, I think when you're really moving from a more virtuous place, you're not the author. Like, you just realize that you are the vessel, you are the portal, you are the messenger, you are um I mean the Messiah, the messenger. You're really, but it's not you. You're not like
The
the kind of,
message, yeah.
yeah, the message. It's like when real poetry comes out of me, it's actually very difficult to say I wrote that, because I didn't write it. Like I did.
Yeah,
You know?
physically.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And there's an essence in me in there. My soul's in it. There's a very particular holliness in that. But those words were not. I didn't. I didn't make them. And I think this kind of goes into what virtue, and because the subtext on this is virtue as its own reward, and talking about George Washington, and that you guide or that you lead, um, not I mean, sometimes I notice like the guidance is sort of, my ego will go, "Well, no, 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 like what? No, we don't do that. Like, don't say that, or can't, or don't go move in that direction." And, but it's like, so sometimes that divine will, or that voice is sort of calling you to do things that your mind and your ego go, like, like George Washington was probably like, yeah, step down. And it's like, yeah, but the thing's a fucking mess. We're in like this chaos, and that seems foolish to step down, or to disassemble something, or to say no to something. Also, sometimes to say yes to something can just seem so crazy and foolish. This relationship, sometimes I'm like, why didn't I say yes? This is crazy. Um, but it's funny because I was talking to John yesterday, and we were talking about kind of forgiveness and virtue, and that virtue has its own reward, that there's not expectation often tied to it. It's just, it's thy will be done, and it's in, and you're not tied to the outcome. You have to completely let go of what the outcome will be. um and sometimes you can anticipate that the outcome is going to
Mm.
ask you to, it's like planting the garden, and then walking away from it and not getting to harvest, um and having to trust that, and not, and there's anticipation, but then also just not even expecting, where it's just like, I'm just going to give what's being asked in this moment, and then trust that it's the next moment's gonna, I can give what I need to give in that situation, and the
Mm.
universe has my back. I trust I mean, this has been my mantra since the Venus sequence is like, I trust you, universe. I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. And yeah, again, letting that need to be in charge, to guide. Like it's like,
Yep.
so
That's
yeah.
it. The
Thank you for
letting,
presence.
I like that letting go of the expectation. I don't remember like what expectation is the death of, but I think it's like imagination or something like that. Like you really lose the greatest gifts when you have expectations, because it's not being grateful for what is. It's saying, I could have had that. Where's mine? And I'm definitely like, I've been dealing with this and grappling with this. And like, because when you do kind of like sense into what everything else needs and not focus on yourself, then you start to feel lack. And so the practice of, well, gratitude and forgiveness, like forgiving myself
Yeah.
and forgiving for existence. Like some of this is dark, some of this hurts. And so there has to be some sort of, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful for even the things that are painful. And yeah, so that's like guiding me towards, or guiding anybody, like not an expectation but a virtue.
Yeah.
Select a virtue and aspire towards it, and kind of have this, but lack of expectation that you'll ever actually achieve the virtue and maintain it at all times.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really sensing into that, because part of the Catholic faith is that you go through all these sacraments, and you got to catch them all. And so some of it is like, yeah, I'm not Christ. What would Jesus do is the question, not how can I be Jesus? So that's the thing, is like, I have to recognize in myself that I am not always going to be virtuous, but I can at least put my sights on it and attempt. And that's that whole idea of sin, is just that archery term of being off of target. And so it's not saying like I'm a bad person if I'm off the path, but the whole idea is to just continue to realign myself towards it and take those pauses and just reflect, like, how am I diverging from this virtue that I am aspiring towards?
Exactly. Yeah. Oftentimes it's that divergence that actually deepens, right? Because you go,
Absolutely.
it's the learning, and you do the thing, you get off the path, and then it's such a beautiful learning experience. Then you become more intimate actually with that virtue, and if you've truly learned, then you're very much less likely to tread off in that same way again. um you know how it will go. Again, this is that myth. If you know how the myth is going to turn out, then you can actually start to rewrite it in a way. And of course, it's tricky. There's like, destiny and all that, but but I think there does get to a point where you can say, yeah, I'm not going to write the same story. I'm going to move it into a different direction. And I just want to, what was coming up for me when you were kind of getting all over the place, but was the back to the dishes, and virtue being its own reward, where you do the
Mm-hmm.
dishes not to get recognition, not to expect me to do them back for you. There's no ledger. Bonnie talks a lot about this. Get rid of the fucking ledger. We have ledgers in all of our relationships, subconsciously, unconsciously.
Mm.
And virtue as its own reward is getting rid of the ledger, and it's just doing the dishes because that's the relationship you're being called to be in that moment. And that having that water, trickle across your hands, and to touch the cutting board and all of that, that is its own reward. There's no expectation beyond that, other than that's what's calling for your attention and your awareness. And the reward is just building that intimacy with whatever is directly in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, what I want to do is, because we've got just a few minutes left, I just want to, because we're going into the Siddhi, and I wanted to give you the etymology of virtue,
Great.
and then, yeah, maybe some reflections from that. So, on Etymo Online, it says, circa 1200, moral life and conduct, a particular moral excellence. And this comes from the Old French vertu, which says force, strength, vigor, moral strength, qualities, and abilities. I'm going to take it one step further, and I can copy and paste this for you. This is from the Latin virtutem, which is moral strength, high character, goodness, manliness, valor, bravery, courage in war, excellence, and worth. And that vir comes from the word for man, which encompasses all of humanity, we should say here.
Well, it's interesting because actually I've looked at, I've contemplated virtue before, and what came for me was actually power. And power being what moves what, right? That's Bonnie's definition. And that there's a tremendous amount of power in moving in virtuous ways. It's like the power of moving with love. And again, love is stronger than fear. And so in any given situation, no matter how much arrows and blood and things are being slung at you, or combative things can be, moving from a place of virtue is moving from a place of deep, deep, deep power. Because there's a power in being able to reveal and rescue and draw out what is good, true, and beautiful in any given situation. And that is probably the ultimate power in life,
Mm-hmm.
is being able to change a narrative, or to be able to see the beauty in any, or see the miracle. That is power beyond power. That is the ultimate power. It's not physical strength. It's an attitude. It's a seeing. And virtue for me is kind of the ultimate power.
Yes. Okay. Because the thing that dropped into my mind, love conquers all.
Yeah. Amen.
Right there.
Yeah.
The
It
sync.
sure does. It absolutely does. Yeah. Because your whole body, what is your experience? Your experience all comes from your body and your sensorial awareness. It's all sensation. So that's that's how we experience life. And so to have the power to experience love, that completely changes your world.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Experiencing love, even when it's not given to you, even when the
Yeah.
opposite is given
Yeah.
to you, still experiencing that love because you're that field, that force, that
Yeah.
power of
Yeah.
love.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the ultimate power, to have the ability the alchemy, to know that alchemy, to transmute fear into love. Like I don't think there's any any more powerful capability.
No greater force.
Yeah.
Well, beautiful.
Yeah, that's great.
How
Wow.
did we do that? I'm impressed. But like we said, it just comes through. It's not these aren't planned discussions. So
Eros, baby.
Eros, baby. Okay. Well, thank you for that beautiful reflection, especially with your evolution sphere being just this. So next time we're going to be talking about Gene Key 4, and
Great.
hope to see you there.